And we are live. Hello, and welcome to the Wooden Ball Show. I'm your host, Dave Ball, also known as Blinson on Reddit and @Blinson1 on Twitter. And like always, I am joined by my partner in crime, Blake, who is known as @ChatMyKirk on Twitter and BTownBomb on Reddit. And today, we are joined by Chris and Nando. You can follow Chris on Twitter at Detroit Southern, and you can follow him on Reddit at Decaf. I guess that's how you pronounce yours?
DKF, Decaf. Yep.
Okay. And you can follow Nando on Twitter at Nandini77 _. And you can follow him on Reddit it's 9Dini77. So how's everyone doing?
Fantastic.
I just had dinner, and it was really good.
Is that why you took so long?
Yeah, pretty much.
Oh,
Yeah,
How
thanks
much
for
you
that.
eat?
No, the bigger question is
At a
why
time
haven't
like
you
this.
brought us anything?
Yeah, seriously, why don't we have any of your
Consider it.
food?
Well, I only bought enough food for 2 other people,
You could have made it work.
and yeah.
you could have been the host of the
Mhm.
Wooden Bowl Show here.
Yeah.
You didn't play your cards right.
We're going to be asking you the hard-hitting questions now.
Are we?
Yeah,
All right, hit him hard. Hit him hard.
we're
Let's see
gonna
what
make it
happens.
tough we're gonna make it tough for you, Nando. Okay,
Oh,
I guess.
Nando.
Yeah. I say when we get to him, we'll make them
When
really
we get to
difficult. Make it
Yeah.
difficult questions that he can't answer, basically. Anyway, I guess we should start with our topics now. First topic we're going to be going is going to be the Detroit Red Wings. And for
yes.
that, we have Chris here to talk about them. And so, the first question. This season you saw most of your team go down with injuries, and you still made the playoffs. What do you think was the biggest reasoning for this?
It's an easy thing to do in sports to just, when we can't figure out something, to go and point at the coach, right? We do that across like almost everything. It almost feels like the expected answer for me to hear us say is Babcock, and he is definitely a part of that. But that's not the only part that gets there. You know, we talk about the injuries, but a lot of guys were starting to come back at just the right time for that as well. Some other guys were having streaks, like Nyquist went on his tear. We got a real good boost with Legwand, Franz, and Tatar really showed his real colors. So it was kind of an all hands on deck kind of going in there to really kind of play in. But at the same time, too, like, I want to kind of temper this by saying we got to also look at what happened in the standings there, too. We have to give some credit to Washington and New Jersey to just basically flop on their head there, too. Detroit was the only one that made the playoffs, the 2014 playoffs, with a negative goal differential across the entire league. The only one. Philadelphia had +1, and I think it was Minnesota had +1. Those were the other two close ones. Detroit had a -8. Washington was -5, but they had about 21 shootouts and lost a lot of points. New Jersey went on an unbelievable outlier and lost 13 shootouts. So, I mean, there was definitely some help happening from other teams that ended up getting Detroit in the playoffs, so we can't just credit them entirely.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And you mentioned Gustav Nyquist in there, and he had a big
yeah.
coming out party this year. So, was that the real Nyquist we saw this year, or was it just kind of just a one-off? The Goose was loose this year.
Goose was loose. Yeah, we tend to. I'm sorry if we offend people with that sometimes. We tend to have a habit of Detroit fans to hype around. There's another guy in the Tigers, Don Kelly. We do kind of the same thing with.
Mm-hmm.
The Nyquist we saw last year could be the Nyquist we see 4 years down the line, in my book, not next year. That sort of talent really needs to grow. It needs some time. That said, while I was kind of waiting for the show to start, I also checked on some stats and some information from my friends over at Winging It Motown, the SB Nation blog, and they kind of compiled kind of a really great forecast on what Nyquist could do, assuming he gets Johan Franzen type minutes and he gets some time on the power play unit. And they're putting his goals at 25 for next year. Potential up to that. Again, that's assuming a couple of things. First off, his shots per game count was around 3. That's going to have to he's going to have to stay at that rate for him to really kind of get that. And again, that's assuming he's going to continue to get those minutes, and he was getting a lot of those minutes because guys were injured. So whether Babcock kind of gives him those same minutes is going to be really good, really important to see on that. It's very easy to just say regressing altogether. But I just think like he'll still be a factor on a lot of things, but he just won't get those minutes.
Okay. So you think that it all depends on where he's basically in the lineup?
Yeah, I mean he's going to regress a little bit. It's just kind of that kind of percentages he was putting up on shooting is just completely unsustainable. But at the same time, too, like it's going to be a bigger factor on how much he is being used, and if he's going to be used in the power play unit as well.
Yeah, I mean he was scoring at something like what, a 30% success rate or something.
Something ridiculous like that.
The 1 point during his tear, which is, yeah, as you said, is definitely unsustainable in all honesty.
Well, I mean that's going to be the key thing to just say that. I'm not going to declare sophomore slump almost immediately though, just on some of the data I was reading. But I think the key point here, the key number to look at is 3 shots per game. If he's still pulling 3 shots per game, see what he's doing on the shot production, where he's going to go with that. That's going to make or break what happens.
Okay. And because of your injuries that you saw this year, and you basically got to see a lot of your organizational depth this year, what do you think of it as a whole, and is it enough to keep the team and the organization in the playoffs?
The Detroit Griffins, or the Grand Rapid Red Wings. I don't know which one we named them. Look, some of our fans are kind of treating the Grand Rapids as this holy grail, this fountain of youth, the Garden of Eden, if you will, of just places where we can continue to get all this talent and reload. And that seems to be the case, and that's always, kind of the payoff when we're talking about organizational depth. I was under the impression we didn't really have a lot of depth at defenseman, and I got quickly put in my place about that when I kind of read up about it. I would say it's enough to reload, but make the playoffs, I can't say. But that's a bigger part. I want to get to the playoff stuff later. But they say in football, the favorite guy in town is the backup quarterback, and it's kind of what happened with Grand Rapids. There's a lot of good depth down there, but I don't know, like, the whole reason the organization really hasn't brought him up and continues to go after kind of short-term free agents is they don't feel that they're ready. So, I don't know. It's going to be a big unknown.
Okay. So, and we kind of saw, it was, in your opinion, did Jimmy Howard decline this year because of everything that happened in front of him? And do you think he's going to return to his, above average level that he's been at for most of his career?
Jimmy Howard's groin kept exploding this year. Let's be clear about that. Okay. Second off, let's also talk about the fact that Jimmy Howard really doesn't have a great defense to really play with now. He's got DeKaiser and someone else whose name is completely flew in my coop. I do this a lot where I just forget names, so I apologize. But he just doesn't have, in 2012, I think it was, he had Lidstrom. Yeah, he had Lidstrom.
Really all you need to
But
say.
I mean, I don't. It's hard to say. I was trying to compare his numbers across some of the board there. A couple of things on Hockey Reference on goals saved above average and goals against percent minus. He's kind of floating around there. He had a goals against percent minus is better if you're lower. I think his best was 2012-2013 was 87. He put up an 86 back in 2010 when he was second for the Calder. This year he was 104 with -5 goals saved above average. So he's had kind of a worse season in that regard. Look, I don't know. I don't know if he's going to ever be an elite talent. I don't know. You kind of wrote in my notes that he was above average. I'm not sure if that's quite what I would say either. The problem is just it's going to be hard to divorce Jimmy Howard from the contract. The contract is something that was paying him to be an elite goaltender. But we're now in an age where pretty much that the goaltenders are going to keep commanding that money. Yeah. I don't know. I mean, the stats are what he is on it. But I think what's actually going to happen, this is going to happen to all goalies altogether, is as we're starting to see the rollout of more advanced stats for shooting, and we're starting to see player tracking on the ice. And I think Jimmy Howard, and for that matter, almost any other goalie, has got to watch out, because the obvious conclusion is that people are going to start watching goalies and seeing where their weaknesses are at. Mm-hmm. So I don't know if people have figured out Jimmy Howard, but he's definitely declining here. Whether he can bounce back, I think that's going to entirely depend upon his health.
Okay. As you said, he's had his groin injuries this year. Do you think that's the big reason that his play kind of declined this year, in your opinion?
Well, I'm trying to remember. I think he might have had something. He was kind of playing with a little bit of that the previous season as well, but he was spent a lot of time out. We kind of rotated a lot with Gustafsson and Mrazek. And a lot of actually great looks for Mrazek, and I think a lot of people might kind of look at him down the line instead of Jimmy Howard. It's hard, man. It's hard to project where goalies are going to go, just because like it's a spot that's just really rough on your body. You're taking a lot of abuse. It's hard to project that kind of thing. But I think he will continue to be about where he is, which is average, and he gets paid above average.
Okay. So with that being said, we're going to move into the off-season kind of portion
Ooh.
of this year. Yes. You guys made a massive splash in free agency. It seems like Kevin Porter. What are your thoughts of basically doing nothing this off-season?
Absolute goat right there. No, look, I don't. This is the $1 million question here. This has been the enigma that has terrorized everyone who is a Red Wings fan, and it is causing a lot of people who aren't Red Wings fans to jump in. And the reason is because no one has a clue what has happened this year to really create it. There's been rumblings of this stuff kind of going forward. Detroit's never really had a great record in the last few years, ever since about like 2009, on attracting a lot of great free agents to come play in Detroit. It's been quietly bubbling there because it had so much talent in-house. No one really noticed until this year, when the team is starting to finally regress in some ways. In the lack of any understanding comes speculation, and speculation can go all over the place. It could be Babcock and his reputation. Like, we talk about him being a great coach, and he is, but at the same time, like, what we're seeing across sports is the dictator coach is kind of going out of style almost. And I'm not saying he's kind of a full-on dictator. I mean, I think what one player I heard it best is like they want discipline, but they don't want overbearing. And that's always a fine line to walk there. It could be Detroit's reputation in this post-bankruptcy time, even though a lot of that is just completely overblown by a lot of the national media. Detroit's a very interesting thing to get into, but I won't get into it here. Could be simply that there's more contenders in play back versus like the early 2000s and the late 90s, when the Detroit Red Wings of old were kind of just dominant, always making a run at the cup. It could be no one wants to basically be stopgaps for these guys coming up from Grand Rapids. It could be, and I think this has got to be the scary point, especially now with the news I just saw today. It could be that Ken Holland has a reputation for underpaying free agents to come here. Part of that because they want to win, but he takes advantage of that, and he underpays them. And that's just not something that can fly anymore because, as I said, there's more contenders. It could be any of this. I think Wingate and Motown, again, had a great theory that expectations in Detroit, and especially the Red Wings, are so high, and the organization is so successful and so much history and so many names that guys are looking at it and it's like, I don't want to go here. I don't want to be just a cog in the machine. I want to be able to make a name for myself. I want to be someone that the fans are going to be a fan favorite. And I'll get into the fan stuff later, but like that I think has some merit. I don't know if I fully agree with it, but it could definitely be a thing. Again, no one really knows what's going on because no one has spoken about it. We haven't actually heard from any of these players on why they didn't choose Detroit.
Okay. I mean, you guys did get a free agent last year in Daniel Alfredsson, who was very good for you guys, from what I remember this year.
We did, but there was also some ties there with Detroit, if I recall, and at the same time too, like he's of an older generation too. Like like a lot of these guys we were aiming for are not of that same age gap as Alfredsson, and don't necessarily have the same vision and the same opinion of Detroit as Alfredsson did, who was definitely playing in the league when Detroit was at its peak height.
That is true, yes. He was part of that older generation that it seems that Detroit kind of has right now.
Right.
With all the people on your team. So that does make sense why he came there over everyone else. Plus he has like the nationality connection to some of the people there too.
Yes.
So that's one of the big things with him. So next question. Dan Cleary. You re-signed him again. How do you feel?
Unlike a lot of my other friends out there, and I think I've had some arguments with another fan of another team about this too, I'm not as up about the Cleary thing as some other. I'm not throwing up my hands about it. I think a lot of that was because we had also re-signed Quincy. which rubbed people the wrong way because Quincy, the thing that we do like to do in Detroit is there's always that goat, and I'm not saying capital letters goat, I'm saying goat, the animal, as in the guy bearing all the sins, and that's what Quincy was. And then you follow him right on the here with Cleary. Look, Cleary gave up a lot of money. He could have signed for Philly, and that was a multi-year deal. And Holland and the Red Wings basically said, "Look, we will make you. We'll give you something here to get you through this again because you've been playing for us. We want to keep you around." And then he goes and gets another one. Partly, and there's a couple of reasons in my mind why that happened. Partly, again, he's giving up multiple years, and you're only giving him like 1 year, and then you really can't just cut him after that. When these guys kind of reach his age and have these kind of problems when they start hitting the age and injuries, and we'll get to the injuries in a second, that they stop being able to command what they can usually command. So I mean, he kind of got a stopgap thing, and the injury definitely plays into it too. Cleary was basically busted all over last year. Whether he can I feel like this is almost like them saying, "Look, we know you can come back from this." And try to put on that Cleary of old. I don't know if that's going to happen. And finally, I'm not angry at it because, well, actually, two more things. First off, there's no guarantee he's going to make the team. Babcock has said that himself. He might end up going down to Grand Rapids. And second off, so we gave him the money, but I mean, what else are we doing with the money? You just said yourself, we had no one in free agency. So I'm not angry about it. I mean, it's definitely frustrating, but it's frustrating because of a larger issue. Cleary is just a symptom at this point, but if we are going to assume that there are some problems going on with Detroit's reputation, the Red Wings' reputation, then we have to assume then that the only thing you really have at that point is continue the commitment you have to being an organization that shows loyalty to everyone who works for you and plays for you, and that's what Cleary very well could have been.
I understand that completely. My Flyers do the same exact thing, constantly bringing back old people. I mean, just yesterday, we re-signed a former player, Daryl Powell, to an AHL contract. We have Ron Hextall as our GM, Paul Holmgren as our president, Bobby Clark in the organization, Bernie Perrot's there. I understand you are loyal to your players, which should, in fact, actually start attracting free agency players.
Right.
Because they see if this organization keeps those players well, they're probably going to treat me well too.
Well, there's going to be big over-ending things. I mean, again, when you're down on that, this is your reputation on the line. This is something that they do down in basketball. I'm a big basketball fan. With the Miami Heat, Pat Riley always talks about La Familia. This is your reputation on the line, and you can't just go all cutthroat on these guys just because there's a lot of fans out there who have taken the habit of playing armchair GM and only see efficiency and simulation and all that. And again, ultimately, where else are we throwing that money?
Mm-hmm.
So
Mike Babcock did not win the Jack Adams Award again this year. Do you think he deserved it over Patrick Waugh?
Man, what a question. If you had asked me during the season when I was at my most rabid, I would have said yes. Look, there is a formula to winning the Jack Adams. We know what this is. Everyone was saying it during the season that Patrick Waugh was following the formula to a T, to take a team from last to first. It's this formula that just doesn't include consistency towards success. It includes surpassing expectations, hype, and surprise. Babcock has become the Martin Scorsese of hockey. He is always going to put out a great show. He's going to put out a great product, and in the end, he's still going to get snubbed for that Oscar because there is just other things that are flashy and catch the eye of people. And at some point, he's going to get. I think he probably at some point gets a Jack Adams for a Lifetime Award. I don't know if it's. I mean, maybe there's a fact that it's just not going to go to Detroit, but I'm not going to be a conspiracy theorist either. That said, in addition to all the injuries, and I saw this kind of being argued about the Olympics. A lot of people were saying that the Olympics shouldn't be a factor on this and the fact that he's gold, and I agree with that. But that said, no other coach was impacted by the Olympics as much as Mike Babcock because he lost his captain thanks to the Olympics. He lost Zetterberg to an injury. So that I think you do have to say that. But I don't want to entirely discount Raw entirely. I want to discount the narrative as far as going worst to first, but at the same time, I think what I liked about Raw, and I kind of came around on it eventually. I think he got the Jack Adams, but I think it might have been for the wrong reason. The reason I would have given him the Jack Adams is because he finally started to he was the one coach starting to finally put some of these things we've learned from Corsi and advanced stats into action. Like he started, the big thing we always talk about, pulling the goalie, and that's only one part of the equation here. He actually started to embrace some of that. So I'm fine with him getting the Jack Adams in hindsight, but again, like my points about Babcock stands. Like he's great, he's consistent, he's a model of excellence, and that's why it's going to probably be like his last year in the league before someone actually gives him the Jack Adams as a lifetime award.
So it's going to be probably something like Shea Weber is probably never going to get the what's that award called?
You're asking the wrong person. I have memory gaps all over the place.
Oh, Blake, what's the defenseman award?
The Norris?
Norris, yes, thank you. The Norris Trophy.
Look at this youngster showing you up.
It's fine. Yes, like Shea Weber is never going to win the Norris Trophy.
Right.
Because it's Shea Weber and he's so consistently good. It's always going to be the flashy defenseman that year.
Right. Yeah. No one, like, when you get out these awards, I think the frustrating part is, again, like, how the formula has been figured out by people. The K-fob of rest, as you will, has been uncovered and understood, and yet no one cares. They basically have thrown up their hands like, well, this is the way it is. And it's so defeatist and so kind of like, guys, we can actually challenge this now. And no one's going to.
Okay. So heading into next season, how do you feel about this season coming up? Think about all the amazing moves you did during the off season, everything that kind of happened with any injuries now aren't going to be there anymore. Anything coming about your players coming up? How do you feel about this season coming up?
This is going to be a complicated answer, and I hope it's the cliche word to use here is crossroad. It's a crossroad, and that's going to make a lot of people scared. Detroit sports fans are very tough on. I'm not going to say that they're tough, like emotionally and all that, but they are tough on people. Like I've heard some people throw the word "spoiled" at me a lot recently because I've questioned some stuff going on with it, that spoiled because we have this streak going on. But I don't really see it. I don't want to just paint a brush across that entirely. There are fans. Detroit sports fans are incredibly smart. They know when something is going on, and unfortunately, we are also traditionally kind of. Maybe it's because we're in Michigan. We're kind of traditionally kind of driven towards pessimism and being cynical sometimes. But I'm not going to paint the entire fan base that way. But if something is going on, they will start picking up on it, and I think we'll learn very quickly. Like the Detroit fans will know before anyone else what is going. Like. The only game I actually went to in person to the Joe Louis this last year was I took my sister up to Detroit. It's kind of like a Christmas thing, like right before we were playing the New York Islanders, and it was an awful game. We lost something like 5-0, and like 4 of those goals came in the first period, and there was like absolutely no shooting from the Red Wings, and like everyone was hurt. Mrazek was in net at that point, and it was just it was awful. And Detroit fans, for the first time in a very long time, booed the performance on there. That's not being spoiled. That's just being smart. And anyone else would do it. Like, don't kid yourself thinking that Detroit fans are spoiled just because there's streaks going on. I don't like that. That's just so petty. But I will say this: as a fan of sports all around, that kind of uncertainty that may make some diehard fans of the team itself very nervous about it and about the streak. Exciting for me. Like, you have a very big reason to watch every regular season game right now. Your heart will be in knots. Your stomach will be twisted. Every point will seem like it matters. It's going to be exciting for me. It's going to maybe be a heartbreak. It might be elation. But that's wonderful for me. That is wonderful for me as a fan of sports. And it's also interesting for me as just kind of a fan of the meta in sports too, because this is kind of the first time we've seen a team that is usually a model of excellence in any sports start to kind of face this uncertainty. Nothing really lasts forever in this sort of thing. Like we talk about the haves of old, but in the modern, in like the last like 30 years or so, we really haven't had a chance to really kind of explore this again, especially now in the age of the salary cap and mandated equality and parity across these sports. Like, we talk about every sport has one, right? They always have a team that has the way, the Red Wings way, the Patriots way, the Spurs way. There are these things, the Cardinals way. There are these things that we assign to this almost quality of eternity we assign to these teams that have just been good almost seemingly forever. And we can't, every good thing has to come to an end at some point. And what better way to think about it than just looking at the streak? I don't know if just because they lose the streak that just means it's over, blow up the whole thing. I'm not saying that. But this doubt, this doubt on what it should be a model of consistency is exciting and intriguing, and it deserves kind of watching it. Like one of the things I saw in the Grantland on their Detroit week was the article Hockey Towns Endures talking about the streak, and it's a great article. I urge anyone they can to go read it. It was written by one of their hockey writers over there who does great work, but there's just so much is going on here, and I can't say anything but exciting. I have no clue how it's going to go, but I'm excited about it. I think this is the most excited I've been about a season for a long time.
Okay. I had a question, but I forgot it now for that, so I'm just going to head on to the next one.
All right.
Do you think you're going to be buyers or sellers at the deadline?
Most likely buyers. It would take... I kind of figured this out, as far as scenarios. Either the Red Wings are going to completely surpass all these expectations, they're going to lock up a seat in the Atlantic Division, and of course there will be buyers at that point.
Yeah.
Or they're holding on to a wild card, or they're just a few points out, maybe 5-6 points out. That might seem like a lot, but in the eyes of Detroit, the streak has become a thing, a point of pride, a point of honor, even for the players. So, and even for the front office. So I think even if it's that's the case,
yeah,
there's still going to be buyers at some point. They'll try to scrap something out. There's probably going to be some guy that they can try to get as a rental, kind of like what they did with Legwand, and try to put something together just to kind of go on this whole theory that if they sneak in that they can make it big. Even though I'm not a huge fan of that theory. Since 2009. It's really quick to point to the Los Angeles Kings, what they did back in 2012, but I think it's kind of more of an outlier than the standard.
I don't think it's much of an outlier because you point to them, you point to the Flyers in 2010,
Right.
Last day of the season, shootout.
Right.
I don't think it's as much of an outlier as people think. No one expected Buffalo in 2010, 2011 to make it, but they made it. Thrashers in 2007. They won their division that year, but
with the expectations as much as it is, in Detroit, it's just not enough to really get in there in one series.
Yeah.
I tried arguing this with someone a while ago about the streak. Since the last finals appearance the Red Wings made in 2009 against the Pittsburgh Penguins, they have only won 3. This is across. So we're talking 2009 to 2010, 2010 to 2011, 11 to 12, 12 to 13, 13 to 14. So I have a BFA, so I completely forgot how to count there. But I think that's about 5 seasons right there.
About
6?
that, yeah.
No,
5,
6
something
seasons.
like that. Whatever, yeah.
We've only won 3 series. That's really, compared to some of the other teams that what they've done in that time frame, that's really low. So I don't know what to say to that. Is it okay to just get in and just kind of say, hey, we continue to streak and just, get bounced in 5 again by a top seed?
Anything can happen in the playoffs, in my opinion. Anything can happen in the playoffs.
It is, but it's weighted by skill. After about the 90% period in the play, it's been proven now 90% of the way through the season, skill overtakes luck in these kind of things. So we can talk about
the long stretch of the season. Yes, skill overtakes luck in the long stretch of the season. But since it's just a short period of time, in a 7-game thing, luck might prevail.
Look, all I'm saying is that I'm always going to look at the hard stats, but what you're saying about everything happening in playoffs, as was quoted by a lot of fans last year, in the belief that and it was quoted by almost everyone. It's the belief that, oh, hey, the Red Wings can sneak in and no one wants to face them. No one wants to face the Red Wings when they're playing there, and they get bounced in 5 by Boston.
Okay, yeah, I see. So, instead of continuing on this, if argument that we're kind of having. We'll just get to the next one because I don't think we're
Oh, it's
both
fine.
gonna.
I'm liking
We're
it.
not gonna both gonna agree on that with that.
No, we'll agree to disagree.
Yeah, we'll agree to disagree with
It's something for a later period to talk about.
Yeah. So who do you think is gonna score the most goals in your team next year?
I originally told you I really didn't care
Yeah.
about these things. I don't care about these kind of individual things. I'm much more always about team efficiency and what the team is putting together there. But that said, I mean, kind of behind the Nyquist storyline, very quietly, was Jonas Tatar making a case for being a centerpiece for the future, and I think he's going to really kind of come out as the goal leader next year.
Okay. And the most points next year?
Zetterberg, if his back doesn't explode.
Sounds like a big if right there. And now, my favorite
They're not
question.
playing a 2015 Winter Olympics, are they? No. Okay.
No,
Good.
no, you're good.
Good.
You're good on that part.
Yeah.
So, and my favorite question to ask everybody in this:
Mm-hmm.
say everything goes to hell, and your team is just bad this year.
Mm-hmm.
Who is being thrown under the bus?
I love this question because it's already happening. Everyone is already talking about it. It's probably the team that's been talked about the most for this happening, outside of maybe the Penguins, and you could argue that they're already trying to blow stuff up all over the place. Depends who you ask, though. That's the real fun part about this question. In my mind, Holland, without question. I mean, today's news actually kind of throws a wrench in that because they just gave him 4 more years. So, I mean, it would have to really be a stinker to say, hey, the ink's kind of dry here, but, like, let's get rid of you right now. But if I hadn't had the news today, I would say Holland without question. I think that's what the fans will still say. They'll point at Holland and say, why didn't you do anything in free agency? Why didn't you get us any, you've kind of left this stuff out to dry and you're kind of like really finally all your problems are coming to roost. Outside of Detroit, though, I think people are rooting for Babcock to take the fall because it becomes such a story. Like, I'm a college football fan. I saw this happen this year during the offseason with Nick Saban, the coach of Alabama, who is by all intents and purposes a god in Tuscaloosa. He is a legend in the sport already, and he's still coaching. And Texas was supposedly in the hunt for him, but they really had no real shot at him at the end of the day. But you couldn't stop the rumors. You couldn't stop them no matter what. And it's happening here on a different level. It's percolating a little lower, but it's happening right now with Babcock. People are saying, no one in the Red Wings camp, no one in Detroit itself has said a thing about Babcock leaving. The only thing they're saying is basically reacting to things outside. It started with some columnist in Pittsburgh who has a reputation for just really kind of getting the ball wrong, and it's now it's being run with by Toronto as well. And I think I saw like some other team talking about maybe getting Babcock as well. But it's crazy. It's crazy that this has basically started with nothing. And it's just mushroomed in this thing. And if they have a stinker of a season, it's going to get bigger. Everyone is going to think Babcock is going to leave. And quite frankly, I don't know. That's always the thing about this sort of thing. I think he would stay. I think he would accept it as a challenge. But I mean, at the same time, too, he's been here a while, and
He could say that's his time to leave.
yeah. It's hard to say what is going on at that point.
Yeah, that's true. I mean,
But I don't want to play into it. Until we actually have some facts, people have really got to chill out on the Babcock stuff, and I think some people have been doing a good point of it, but it's still like people, I think, are envisioning Babcock out, like they want Detroit to fail just so they can continue to entertain this idea that Babcock can maybe come to their team. And quite frankly, I wouldn't blame him.
okay. So I think that's everything, unless Blake has any questions he wants to add in.
Oh, joy.
Blake?
Oh no. That
I got all the questions this week, unlike last week.
yeah. That was very thorough there. That whole segment.
If I may, I will say that, Chris, your word choice was excellent.
I've done this before, you know.
Okay. Yeah, you have your own podcast, so don't you?
No, I don't. I used to
thought
do
you were part
radio.
of CFB. Oh yeah, you used to be on the radio, right?
Yeah, I used to be on the radio. I thought about doing some CFB stuff. I just haven't had the time yet. And now I almost want to do kind of something on Detroit sports. It's up in the air right now. I'll let people know when I finally make up my mind.
Nice.
Okay. So Blake, now it is your turn. You can do the recap
dear.
and then start in.
We will first reset for everyone. This is the Wooden Ball Show. This evening we are previewing the Detroit Red Wings and the Columbus Blue Jackets. You have just heard Dave here with the overview of the Detroit Red Wings here with Chris. And now I'd like to officially welcome to this podcast Nando.
Howdy.
And also worth mentioning, apart from his Twitter and Reddit, or where you can find him on the Twitter and Reddit, his official title here, I guess, would be host of the Toddler Tuesdays podcast. But Nando, I believe, would I be correct to assume that I could call that show as being on hiatus?
Yes, that is very fair to say that we are on an off-season hiatus for the time being.
Alrighty. Okay. We'll work to get that show back on for you once we get going with the regular season then. Okay. And now we will talk about some Columbus Blue Jackets and the very memorable season that was. We'll first begin by just introducing us to the season that was. It'll be a two-part thing. We'll start with the regular season.
Alright.
I guess one of the big storylines was the off-season prior to this past season. Columbus gets Nathan Horton from Boston there, and with him came a huge wave of hope, I guess, a wave of momentum for the team. But through most of the beginning of the season, at least, he was out with an injury. So, it kind of felt to me from an outside perspective that with that injury, I don't believe he even played a game for him yet at the start of that season, or was that very early in the season after a couple games when he had that injury, or was that an off-season injury?
I believe it was an off-season injury.
So yeah, he hadn't even played a few games for him yet, but still, from an outside perspective, again, it looked to me like that was just a huge momentum killer early for the team, and the team struggled to get out of the gates and through most of the beginning part of the season. But then, something clicked in that locker room, I guess, and they rode a wave of momentum. But that's enough for me, for that part at least. Nando, from your perspective, let us just introduce us to the regular season of the Columbus Blue Jackets.
So, I guess one of the more bizarre things that happened was we kind of knew when we signed Nathan Horton that he would have a major surgery. So that was one of the bigger gambles that we took coming in. But the regular season at the start was not something to love about the team, because we got to the point where we had pace similar to the New York Islanders. We were kind of hitting rock bottom with them in the Metropolitan. I mean, besides the Horton injury, we had a slew of other injuries, including Jared Boll was out. I believe Cam Atkinson, Matt Calvert were out, and it was just a constant sideshow of okay, who's going to be injured next? How many more people are we going to be injured? And especially the big kicker was Bobrovsky was injured at one point towards the latter part of the first half of the season. So yeah, I remember we finished the season barely under 500, and we really didn't look like we had that playoff picture and hope. But then I believe, what was it, the day that Bobrovsky came back, we had that 8-game winning streak. Everyone was riding on this emotional hype train, and it just kind of rocketed from there. And then we kept that pace going, and then we ended up squeezing into the last playoff picture thanks to what was it, the blunder that Toronto had too, with their 8-game losing streak at the very end of the season. But yeah, I'm surprised too. We actually beat Detroit in standings from at least a road perspective. Like, our road points were higher than Detroit, so that kind of got us from playing Boston and then into playing Pittsburgh for the playoffs. So yeah.
So, a question to transition into the playoff overview. What did you feel, other than I guess outside things such as Toronto's collapse there? I guess within the team at least. What did you feel was that one driving force that motivated the team?
I'm pretty sure it was Bobrovsky's return from injury that really helped the team. Because even though we had like a good backup situation where we at least weren't like completely tanking, we knew that we would have a good situation coming in with Bobrovsky coming back from injury.
All right, and that does bring us into the playoff overview. Columbus makes it into the playoffs for the second time in their short franchise history, from a 3-1 defeat of the Dallas Stars. But that puts them into the playoffs, gets them the eighth seed in the Eastern Conference, and gets them a first-round series against the Pittsburgh Penguins. And if you were to look at brackets, just from like sports writers or just everyday people, you'd usually see maybe Pittsburgh in 4 or Pittsburgh in 5. Rarely did you see someone having Columbus get to the second round, and if you did, it would have been in 7 games. But it was just I guess a wave of pessimism, I guess, from the outside world that really didn't think Columbus had a chance in the playoffs.
Oh yeah.
But as it turns out, of course, Columbus did lose out in the first round of the playoffs, but they took a very heavily favored Pittsburgh team to 6 games, I believe. Just to go over the playoff series with Pittsburgh there.
So coming in, we did have that underdog perspective, like you mentioned, and I really do believe that we were like our team's motivation was just taking everyone else by surprise. Like, we were just trying to use this element of surprise method, and that became very evident in the first game when we scored 3 goals in like the first period or something crazy like that. Everyone was pretty much in shock until we kind of blew the lead. But in the second game, we finally won our first playoff game ever in franchise history, thanks to a double overtime goal by Matt Calvert over a very sloppy play by Marc-Andre Fleury. And then, of course, Game 3 and Game 4 were pretty chaotic. And then, of course, Game 5 was the Malkin show, where he just scored a hat trick and kind of just took over the rest of the game. But I really think, like, what we showed in the playoffs is that we were more than just, like, that team in the background. We were kind of making ourselves, like, some kind of playoff contender very early on. And I really do believe we showed a lot of weaknesses in that Pittsburgh team, because we not only showed that if you pressure them hard enough, they will fall apart really easily, and also their defense was in need of way more improvement, and their offense as well needed at least more people participating than just Crosby and Malkin doing all the work and sending other people up, because from what I remember, we shut down Crosby pretty early thanks to Brandon Dubinsky's peskiness, repeated peskiness throughout the games. But then we showed that, like, if we took out Crosby and we were able to neutralize some of the bigger forces in that Pittsburgh team, that we could take away games from them and then make them, like, at least start to doubt themselves and like hopefully moving to the next round. And I really do believe that we could have gone through that series and probably shocked all of hockey, but it didn't happen. So we'll just wait for next year.
Now, I happen to be browsing the Blue Jackets Wikipedia page earlier in this podcast, and you mentioned the milestone of winning your first playoff game in franchise history. Now that happens to be quite a far cry from the season record broken by Columbus just a few years ago. Would you happen to have a guess of what record this is, Nando?
Our game-winning streak record?
Nope. It is a streak. Or no, it isn't a streak, but no, I'm of course referring to when Columbus broke the record for being shut out the most times in a regular season.
Huh.
And
That's a very...
And a tie-in to this whole entire podcast, they broke that record with a 3-0 loss to the Detroit Red Wings. But yes, that is a far cry, and I think I guess that may put into perspective just how far Columbus has come as a team, really.
Yeah.
But next up is unit breakdowns: offense, defense, goaltending, and coaching. And your answer, it can be regular season and the playoffs. You can combine the two there, and we'll begin with the offense. As I mentioned, one of the big supposed to be one of the big offensive leaders for Columbus from the start of the season was the aforementioned Nathan Horton, but with that off-season injury, he was unable to make his mark early on. So that falls on the shoulders of people like Johansson and Dubinsky, and among others, of course. But just talk about how the offensive, how the forward side performed in the season.
Well, I guess to add on to Johansson's year, he did have a career-high 33 goals this year, so that definitely helped on the offensive level. Of course, from guys like Matt Calvert and Cam Atkinson, we kind of had like what their usual season running of like 20 goals, a lot of assists, yada yada yada. But then we also had a standout between rookie Boone Jenner, who had, I believe, 17 goals this year, which is pretty remarkable for a rookie. And he was pretty close to beating Rick Nash's records. Hold on a second. I'm sorry.
Well, I suppose while we take a quick break, while Nando is off doing whatever, I guess.
Nando things. He's doing Nando things.
He's doing all these Nando things.
Nando things, just Nando things.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah.
But, I don't want to leave this empty here.
No.
So, go ahead.
I do want to continue that conversation with you about that kind of stuff in the future about, just noise in the playoffs. But I'm not sure if this is here. I think, actually, Nando, are you back now?
I am back now.
Okay.
So we don't have to continue the conversation.
Yes, you may continue that conversation.
So I guess continuing all away from Boone Jenner, we also had our deaf players doing an exceptional job of showing what our forecheck could be like. Guys like Blake Como, we picked up Jack Skilly during the offseason, Derek McKenzie, gosh, I'm trying to think of who are the other players. Mark Letestu, of course, but he had a more offensively productive year between scoring. But I believe that our fourth line really showed that our forechecking is really outrageous and in your face, and that kind of built the character of Columbus as this nitty-gritty team who are getting into kinks and working in areas that most teams usually ignore. So I believe our offense was definitely an improvement. We definitely showed that it was more of a team effort than just a one-man showing, even with Johansson's great year.
Okay, and something new I am introducing into these questions. For each unit, give us like a school grade, A minus, whatever, of how you felt the team performed. Give us a grade of the offense from last season.
I would give it a. This is actually kind of tough now that I think about it. I would give it a B plus. I mean, even though we may have finished strong, our offense definitely wasn't that great in the beginning. I mean, we did post some really good numbers for offense this year, especially from some of the offensive defensive players that we had, but I would give it a B plus. I mean, it's good, it's really good, but it didn't really show like what our true potential could be, which is where I feel like an A level would be at, if you know what I mean.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Now let's move on to the defense, and I have nothing supplemental to add to the question, so you can just take it from here.
Alrighty, so defense was a lot of points really rocky and inconsistent, which kind of characterized the entire season. I believe like one of our bigger emphasis was how many turnovers we had, and especially how many own goals we had in the early parts of the season, but I still do believe that our defense did really well. We had James Wisniewski, who had a huge year this season, between his 51 points scored, which is a team high as of right now, and let's see, who else had a really phenomenal year? Oh yeah, our rookie, Ryan Murray. Definitely one of the more surprising turnouts this year, because it was especially shocking that we pulled in a rookie that at that age to become like a regular starter for the team, but then he also showed that he could play that way and he could grow and become an even better player leading on. I mean, even though he had like a minor injury midway through the season, he did show that he was a top level defenseman that showed that like our draft was starting to become better and that we were able to keep players, and hopefully we can keep him for a long period of time. Now, we did also have moments where some defensemen started lacking, like Fitter Tootin, who is one of our longer season players on our team, but he seemed to have just a very lackluster year. He ended up playing mostly behind the scenes and definitely could have played more, but I think because of his role and who he was paired with most of the time, he ended up not becoming more of an offensive threat, but just having to be in defense because he was always backing other players up when there was like some kind of turnover on the point. And I'm trying to think who else were really good. Oh yeah, Jack Johnson once again had a really bizarre type of season where he wasn't really showing himself to be some type of leader that he always usually is with the team by having a very slow start. And I mean a very slow start to the beginning of the season. I believe really the only crucial part that he had to the team overall was just being a part of the power play and just helping the team be an offensive threat on the power play by just racking up assists and whatnot. But it really didn't seem like he was really showing like some kind of leadership role. He just kind of seemed like another player, another person, and to me he just doesn't really seem like a person that could well, I'm repeating myself at this point, but I just think that hopefully next year he just shows himself to be more of a leader and carry himself around other players, and then hopefully kind of show himself up more and not have to be like some kind of turnover machine that he usually is.
Alrighty, and how would you grade the defense?
I would give it a B minus. I can't really give it a C because that's lowballing how relieving it was our defense was offensively. So I would give it a B minus.
Alrighty. And next, on to the goaltending now. As you mentioned in the opening pros, Sergei Bobrovsky. He was a huge driving force for the team, a huge key to the team. But he did go down with an injury, kind of in the early part of the season. So the team mainly resorted to McElhinney, I believe, through most of that. Just to kind of go over Bobrovsky and McElhinney, and I believe there was one other there.
McKenna is the other.
Yes.
Sorry.
Okay. Yes.
So,
Just go on.
So Bobrovsky, I think this year really showed himself to be an elite goaltender. I think after winning that Vezina, he kind of had to prove himself more as a player, and he definitely showed up every game. He was probably winning factor to too many games that we've won, in my opinion, but I really do think that he did a wonderful job this season. And it was really unfortunate with the 2 injuries that he had. I believe both of them were groin-related, or at least something to do with his legs. But Curtis McElhinney, we kind of picked him up after he being shuffled around other teams, and he really showed himself to be a really good backup, especially after the fact that he had to play, I believe, roughly 15 games this season, and still posting at least a 900 level, albeit it wasn't the best 900 that you could get out of a goaltender, but he's a backup, so, I mean, for that kind of playing, he did fairly well. And then McKenna was more of a surprise, too, because he was an AHL call-up, and his AHL situation was he was a co-starter with another player, Jeremy Smith, and he definitely showed that even though McElhinney got injured himself at one point, McKenna definitely showed that he had some kind of promise in breaking into the NHL as some sort of a backup, even though we kind of just called him McBackup too a lot of times. But I really do believe that our goaltending was amazing for the situation that we had, and I really do believe that our goaltending will get even better now because of who we're bringing into this season onward.
Okay, and a follow-up question regarding Bobrovsky and the playoffs, the playoff round.
Mm-hmm.
At first glance, it looked like Bobrovsky wasn't playing very well. It looked like he wasn't playing up to where he can be. But when if we were to break it down more, would that have really been the case? And I guess depending on your answer, this isn't just goaltending. This can also be the whole team. But was it mainly just on Bobrovsky's shoulders, or was there more to that?
I don't think it was really on Bobrovsky's shoulders, mostly because I feel like judging the playoffs has such a small sample size that you can analyze and pull from if you want to talk about goaltenders' performance. And I would say that it was more of a team effort to try and do well, because it really took a whole team to try and get the Pittsburgh Penguins to fall and falter as they did in the playoffs. So I really do believe that it was more about a team effort, and Bobrovsky was just another person who was in that team who wanted to, or who was to help the team, or help Columbus get to the next round. And I believe that there are also some other players who had sort of lackluster regular seasons that definitely stepped up this season. So players like Umberger and Jack Skilly, for example, who we didn't really see that often in the regular season, but they really showed themselves in the playoffs. But unfortunately, both of those two players are not on the team anymore. So.
Alrighty. And how would you grade the goaltending?
I would give that an A-. Between Bobrovsky's another solid performance by Bobrovsky this year, and the fact that we have backups who performed well and were able to sustain the team through some really tough times really show that we have a good goaltending situation. And that management really did their work and got players who we knew that could back the team up at hard times. So, yeah.
Alrighty, and to conclude the unit breakdown, let us go over head coach Todd Richards and the Blue Jackets coaching staff.
Oh, yeah, I would say that our coaching staff did really well. Of course, we had high expectations for them coming into the season by re-signing a lot of those guys. I believe we gave Todd Richards a 2-year extension, so that basically signaled to the team that we knew what we were heading into, and we knew that Todd Richards was going to be the person that we're bringing the future towards. So our coaching staff did a very excellent job. Gosh, I'm trying to think. I believe no, it's not Dan Highnote. It is Dan Highnote, was also our assistant coach. He had a wonderful performance as well by supporting the team. Sadly, he's not going to be with us next year, but hopefully he'll come back soon, because I'll miss that guy.
Alrighty, and how would you grade the coaching?
I would give that a solid A. I really would. I mean, I believe that, like, part of the reason why we kind of started slow really wasn't by the coach's own faults. I believe that it was more of just a team shuffle and, like, the team trying to get themselves into, like, some kind of season form. And it really took us to, like, almost the last minute to try and get that season form all rolling. But I believe the coaches did an excellent job of just working with the players and just trying to figure out, like, some kind of working system, or at least a working line where we knew players would work well together and hopefully help the team carry on.
Alrighty, and to conclude the look back at the previous season, we will discuss the trade deadline. Among the, or probably the only really high-profile movement was trading Marian Gaborik away to the Los Angeles Kings, and getting, I believe, no, not Matt Green, somebody, I don't know.
Matt Fratton.
Okay, Fratton, yeah, I knew it was one of those Matts. Okay, well, I guess just discuss the Gaborik trade for Fratton and any other trades that occurred there.
Well, the Gaborik trade was kind of like a long overdue trade. We gave him another shot this season to see if he could perform well, but what ended up happening was he would be injured for a long period of time, come back, play well for a few games, and then become lazy. Then he would get injured again, and it would just cycle through on. And I believe that actually happened in the Philadelphia game where he just got back from some kind of shoulder injury, and then I believe on his very first shift he got re-injured again by someone hitting him on the shoulder that he just, like, healed up, essentially. So the Gaborik thing was more...
happened with us. Just saying, it did happen with us.
It's all your fault, Dave. I'm just kidding. So I do say that the Gaborik trade was a much-needed thing. I don't believe that what we got in return... I do believe that what we got in return was really good for us, at least, because we got a conditional draft pick that we ended up keeping. And we also got Matt Fratton, who was a really good depth player. I mean, he's not going to be like a consistent showing on the team, but he was definitely a good depth player that just kind of helped the team roll along. And another trade that we had was with Nikita Nikitin, which was a very bizarre move since he was a restricted free agent at the time that he was playing. So we ended up picking up Nick Schultz as a defenseman to give the rights to Edmonton. To give the rights to Edmonton so that Edmonton could talk to him and sign him. Of course, Nikitin got like a 6-year ridiculously high deal, basically paying him as a top defensemen. And we got Nick Schultz, who ended up being just another, I guess, depth player who, I mean, like I said with Fratton, that he's not going to be like a consistent showing, but he's definitely going to be there to just help us roll along.
Alrighty, and that concludes our look in the back at the previous season. That brings us to this off season, the off season that has already occurred, and what's ahead. And we'll begin by discussing some of the free agencies, some of the additions and subtractions in free agency.
Yeah, we had a huge subtraction. I will say that our depth definitely took like a huge hit with our subtraction of players because we lost, I believe, an entire line's worth of players and then some. But I guess the good thing that came out of that whole free agency debacle is that we got Scott Hartnell, who I still can't believe that trading Umberger will result in getting Scott Hartnell, even though they have very similar statistics. Scott Hartnell definitely seemed like the better player out of that trade, but I won't complain. He's on the team now, so that's that. And we also picked up, Simon Hjalmarsson from a Swedish team, or from the Swedish Hockey League. Jerry D'Amigo, who did we trade? Oh, I think we gave up, Matt Fratton. We gave up Matt Fratton for Jerry D'Amigo. And, yeah, I mean, most of the transactions that happened during the off-season seems really bad when you just talk about, like, the AHL and the NHL standpoint, but really, the only reason why we let go of some of these players or never really contested for them is because we knew that our prospects would come in to the AHL system, so we needed to make room for them to come in, but also give the players who were in long-term deals with Columbus and knew that and wanted more play time, and we just gave them that opportunity by letting other players go, giving the players that we had signed already like a chance to play more often, and then let our prospects enter the AHL and give them time to play. So that really summed up our off-season, was just developing prospects and just making some depth movements. So.
Oh, okay. And looking ahead at the rest of this free agency period and up until the preseason games, kind of a two-part question here. Would you expect Jarmo Kekalainen in the Blue Jackets front office staff? Would you expect them to make any more moves, and would that compare to if you personally would like to see some more moves occur, some more additions?
Of course I would want more moves. I want Johansson back already. This stuff, I mean, the whole Johansson debacle, which, I guess to fill in everyone, that he's a restricted free agent this year, and due to, I guess in part of his explosive season this year, is in contract negotiations still with the team. Of course, they can't do arbitration because he's a restricted free agent, so it's just between Johansson's agent and the team on just trying to figure out what kind of deal that they want. And so far, from the news, which is probably like 2 to 3 weeks old as of right now, is they're still, I believe, oh man, I'm trying to remember what unit of measurement that they use. I think they use hectares or something crazy like that. They're just essentially saying that they are very far apart, and this deal could take probably longer than this offseason to get done, which sounds awful, and it is awful, and I just want Johansson back. Yeah.
Okay. Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm. And now we will discuss the NHL draft that occurred this past off season. kind of again that school grade. Kind of give us an overall grade of how you feel Columbus did in the draft, and kind of go over some of the draft picks you're excited about. I guess that Columbus picked up.
Well, I would give Yarmo especially I would give him a B on the grade, mostly because the way he drafted this year seemed to be more about picking players who are going to be long-term development players, and we're just going to have to let them grow slowly into like some kind of long-term farm system, and then just let them come into the NHL sort of like casually and not really rush them as if they're like some kind of mega talent. Now, the only exception I can think of that is Sonny Milano, who was our first round draft pick, and Oliver LeBlanc, who was, I believe, our 6th round draft pick. Those are 2 players, I believe, who could be pulled in very soon into the NHL, unless Sonny Milano wants to really play for Boston College for all 4 years. But I really do believe those are the 2 players that we could see come into the league sooner than others. But I believe we kind of picked players who are just kind of core players who would take a long time to develop, as I mentioned earlier, and they would definitely just want to, I don't know, I guess there's really no rush in this type of draft compared to last season, which now all of a sudden we're seeing all of those players come into the AHL and almost begging to come into the NHL at this point. So I think we just kind of wanted to take a step back, kind of pick players who we knew this is going to take a while, and yeah.
Alrighty, and that brings us into looking ahead into the next season. Now, Nando, I'm going to put you on the spot here, so
Okay.
Get ready for this question.
I think I'm ready.
First, I want the first word in this answer to be yes or no. Will Columbus make it 2 playoff appearances back to back?
Yes, and I believe that we'll have a better position in the playoffs than last year. So that's my answer.
Alrighty. Okay, and now we'll kind of lax things a little and let you freely discuss things into the upcoming season. Just kind of talk about how just basically where you would see Columbus kind of fitting in this season. Now that you're used to the life in the Eastern Conference, and you're very familiar with your divisional opponents now. How do you see this next season playing out?
I believe that we're gonna have like more heated competition with our division teams, more specifically between New York and Pittsburgh, especially after what happened last season. Philadelphia, I'm not entirely sure if there's going to be anything very serious coming out of that. Maybe just like, well, I'm pretty sure that we're going to have some intense games like we always do. But maybe this whole Scott Hartnell thing will take into effect this season, but I really doubt it. I believe like next season is when it's going to get like really edgy in your face. So hopefully we do better against our own division too, because between how we played versus Pittsburgh should probably drastically improve if our roster is healthy. Sorry.
Alrighty, and to conclude this interview process, we will get to our fun miscellaneous questions here. We'll begin with your prediction of the top goal scorer for the upcoming season.
I believe if he really wants to stay with the team, it'll be Ryan Johansson again, unless Nathan Horton has to say anything about that. He probably will have something to say about that and probably become a very close race to the top of the goal scorers sheet. So but I still believe it will be Johansson again.
Alrighty. And now, who do you see as the best overall player? Who do you see as the best player that would make the biggest impact to the team?
Oh dear, I believe it'll be Brandon Dubinsky, especially after his 6-year contract, unless Bobrovsky decides to post like a 9.9 or .99 save percentage, which I would love for that to happen too, but I still believe that Dubinsky will have another really good year.
Oh, yes, and speaking of Dubinsky, actually, there was one question that I forgot to go over with you here. I hate to break from the flow of things, but I feel this is a question that maybe just one person may notice that I didn't ask, but as of this moment, I believe there's still no official captain for the Columbus Blue Jackets.
Yes, yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, the question is, who do you see as being the best fit for the next captain of the Columbus Blue Jackets?
I'm still really comfortable with the fact that we have no captain on the team. In fact, I would honestly prefer that there would be no captain on the team for how well we are doing right now, but I would say Brandon Dubinsky would be the next captain of the Columbus Blue Jackets, mostly because he embodies like the spirit of the team pretty holistically. Yeah. Yep. Brandon Dubinsky.
Alrighty. Okay, now we will get to the final question here in the miscellaneous category, and it is, of course, our favorite here in the here at the Wooden Ball show here. Let us not speculate. Let us say that everything that can go wrong does go wrong, and the fans and the well, I guess the media too. The media and the fans, they're out looking for blood. You know, who will they get that blood from? Who will be the public enemy number one?
Gosh, that would make us look like the New York Islanders, but I would say that public enemy number one would be Jack Johnson. As my personal pick, Jack Johnson would definitely be that person that everyone's going to go after. Or probably Jared Bull, but people are already after him, so that really doesn't say much for the team. So yeah, Jack Johnson would definitely be my personal scapegoat for if the season goes bad.
Alrighty, and with that, we have concluded the overview of the Columbus Blue Jackets, and we are about ready to head into the closing. But first, Dave, give us a teaser for next week's podcast. Who will we be going over next week?
Dave. No, Dave.
Oh no.
I don't know what happened
Did
with
we get
Dave.
are we not on the air or something?
Oh,
I should
no,
double
we're-
check that stream.
Oh yeah, we're still live. No,
It's still going. Even I didn't think he was hosting it or something. Did we lose him?
No, Dave, we cannot hear you. Please
Oh,
send help.
yikes!
Please send help.
as a matter of fact, guys, don't fret. I have it right here.
Yikes.
Next week, the 17th and 18th overall picks in the NHL entry draft, we will be previewing the Philadelphia Flyers and the Minnesota Wild. That's going to be a fun one, folks, as your very own Dave Ball here goes from interviewer to interviewee, so that's going to be a fun one there. It's one to definitely tune in for next week. Okay, once again, I'd like to thank our guests for joining us. Representing the Detroit Red Wings, we had Chris join us this evening. Once again, you can find him on Twitter. His username is @DetroitSouthern, or Detroit.
Detroit Southern. Yep.
Yeah, Detroit, I don't know. And you can find him on Reddit. His username is Dekaf, Dekaf. And joining us with the Columbus Blue Jackets, we had Nando.
Hello.
And once again, you can find Nando on Twitter. His username is @Nandini77 _. And for his Reddit, you just take that underscore off. That's his Reddit username.
Oh, yeah.
Convenient.
For the Wooden Ball Show, I am Blake. You can find me on Twitter. My username is @ShatInMyKirk. You can find me on Reddit. My username there is BTownBomb. And for Dave, who mysteriously disappeared, I guess, you can find him on Twitter. His username there is @Blinson1. And just take the 1 out, and you have his Reddit username. For our HockeyCast, you can tune in next Monday night at 9:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, I think, for the Puckin' Awesome podcast. It's a great show, guys. You'll get your fix on the world of the NHL there, and they'll also have a little fun. You know, they have some good side gags there. I believe they used to have some Chris Versteeg fanfics, but I'm not sure what they're doing over there now. You know, it's always a surprise with those guys. It's a good show. You know, recommend tuning in. And, you know, for the other shows, Toddler Tuesdays, which Nando is officially a host of here, the Sunday Recap Show, the Hump Day Hockey Show, all those other shows that we started out with, we'll try to get those back for the regular season. Oh, yes, and of course the Our HockeyCast After Hour. Can't forget those guys either. We'll try to get all those shows back for you for the regular season. And for Our HockeyCast, you can find us on Twitter. Our username is @OurHockeyCast. You can find us on Reddit. Our subreddit there is Our HockeyCast, or Our HockeyCast. You can find our website, OurHockeyCast.com, where you can listen to previous episodes of the Wooden Ball Show, the Puckin' Awesome podcast, and you know, if you go further back, you can find all the other aforementioned shows. And you can do that same thing on our YouTube channel. Our YouTube name is Our HockeyCast. And that is the end of the podcast. And, well, gosh, I hope Dave is hearing me, because we're just about ready to sign off now.